If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. Today's show is another interview, and this time it's with Elisa, who is an eating disorder recovery coach and author, and we talk about fasting and disordered eating. I like to get many perspectives on this podcast because there are some things that I did not personally experience as part of my own eating disorder and recovery. Elisa actually wrote a great guest post for my blog back in 2016 about orthorexia, which is something that she struggled with as well. And then I recently saw a video that she did on her own YouTube channel about her experience with intermittent fasting behaviors. And I thought it would be helpful to bring her on the show to talk about that and how it led to food obsession and ultimately to a harmful relationship with food that eventually spiraled into bulimia. I realize that some of you listening may have some strong feelings about the possible health benefits of intermittent fasting. And I think that this eating strategy is definitely being promoted as the new gold standard of dieting or of weight loss. And sometimes it's not even promoted as a diet at all, but as a lifestyle that is a way toward better health and longevity. However, the reality of fasting does not always line up with this ideal that's being promoted. And this is especially the case for people who struggle with binge eating and compulsive overeating. I hear from people frequently about the problems that fasting has created, and Elisa is an example of this. Now, I would not make an overarching statement that binge eaters or recovered binge eaters can never fast under any circumstances, but I think there are many compelling reasons not to engage in fasting behaviors. I hope that you find the discussion on today's show very useful, and I also want you to know that we recorded this episode as a video interview, and that video version is on my YouTube channel, and I've linked to that in the show notes. Before I share the interview, I just want to mention that the Instagram book giveaway that I talked about in the previous episode is still going on. It's about halfway done. I'm giving away 10 books every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time until November 23rd. What I do is I post the giveaway on Instagram at that time, and then the first 10 people who comment get a free copy of Brain Over Binge. If you want to participate, you can follow me on Instagram, and I'll link to my Instagram in the show notes. And now I'll play the interview. Elisa is an eating disorder recovery coach who helps people recover from eating disorders and return back to intuitive eating. She fully recovered from bulimia, orthorexia, overexercising, and extreme dieting in 2014 and is passionate about helping others do the same. She shares her knowledge and experience through her YouTube channel, Follow the Intuition, and her website, followtheintuition.com. In 2016, she published the book, Brainwashed, that talks about diet-induced eating disorders and how to recover step by step. Her approach to recovery is combined with nutritional rehabilitation, brain retraining, unbrainwashing from diets, and all restrictive behaviors. Her main goal as a coach is to help you start listening to and trusting your body so you can achieve independent and lasting recovery. So I think that sums up really well what you do. And I'd like to welcome you to the show, Elisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. And today we're going to be talking about sort of a specific aspect of your experience with dieting and eating disorders. And if people want to learn more about you and your story, they can also see, the resources I just mentioned. And what we're going to be talking about today is fasting. And I know that fasting sort of started off your eating disorder. That was sort of the first diet that you tried. So can you talk about your own experience with intermittent fasting and how it led to your first binge and then that cycle of disordered eating?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So actually the intermittent fasting didn't start my full-blown eating disorder because that started later, but definitely fasting was one of the things that started my disordered eating and just, feeling that like my body is something that I have to control, and my food and eating is something that I have to manage and everything. So I think like that was the starting point when I like lost the connection with my body, and I didn't trust my body anymore. But like, how did I get into the intermittent fasting? Like I was a teenager. I was about like 15 years old, or maybe even younger. And why I would even start the diet or the fast back then, I think was because, like, obviously as a teenager, your body has changed. I remember like I had suddenly like bigger thighs, bigger legs, like my body just felt like foreign. I felt like uncomfortable in my body, but obviously like everything that was going on was totally normal. Like your body is supposed to change. My body was supposed to, grow from a girl's body into a grown-up's like woman body. But back then I don't remember anybody like particularly like talking about it or preparing me for that. Or maybe I just like kind of brushed it off and I didn't listen. But yeah, like was like the first trigger. And I just want to like stress it because I know like, teenage years are very, vulnerable years for many people. And yeah, your image, like how you are perceived by others. I don't know, for maybe like girls, like the boys are interesting and everything, and you want to look, beautiful and everything. So this was like for me a trigger. But how I got introduced to intermittent fasting, and back then I didn't know that this was the name, but now I kind of like I see like, yeah, this is basically what it was. It was actually through my dance teacher, and me and my best friend, we went to this like dance class, and we had been going there for like several years and everything. And also I want to say that my dance teacher, like she had like a very good heart. She was like such a good person and everything. And for sure, like I don't think like she thought that anything she recommended, was like damaging or something. But I think it's very important to recognize that even people with good intentions and with a good heart, they are also brainwashed by diets. They also believe in dieting, and also like they don't understand the negative consequences, because very often diets are promoted as like healthy and everything. So anyway, like we went to the dance class, and back then my best friend, she also had some eating. Actually, she didn't have eating issues, but she had gained weight. And I want to just say that it wasn't because she was overeating or she had like any eating problem, but actually she had gained weight because of one medication she was taking, because she had like one specific like health condition. So she was taking the medication, she had gained weight. And I guess my dance teacher wanted to just, tell her like how she can lose the weight and everything. And I guess like feel better at herself or something. And I overheard their conversation. And my dance teacher told her, like, you can stop eating after 6 p.m. and drink lots of water. So I overheard their conversation. And as, me and my friend, we are doing everything together, then we also started this diet together. It was kind of like an exciting thing to do. And we started this dieting or the intermittent fasting together. And I was able to keep up with this intermittent fasting for half a year. And of course, right now, I think like, I don't even imagine like how I was able to do it for so long, because now I just think about those things and it just like gives me stress just thinking about it, like all the willpower, all the commitment like has to go with it. I have to like override my hunger signals and everything. But I was able to keep up with this for like half a year. And also since my body was healthy, right? My body was healthy. I never had any eating issues. My metabolism was healthy. I was healthy, like hormonally, metabolically. So obviously I lost weight, and I lost it quickly. And I wasn't like clinically underweight or anything, but I was definitely underweight for my body because I was suppressing my weight. I wasn't, that weight naturally. When I couldn't eat, I definitely wanted to eat, but I just had to like suppress my hunger. And I specifically remember like I went to bed hungry, and my, the biggest, thing I dreamed about, that every night was like the big breakfast I'm going to have. And I specifically remember that I woke up at 6 a.m., like very happily, because this was like, oh, when I can finally eat. Now I'm like, it's so hard to get up at 6 a.m. But obviously, if the motivation is to eat because you are so hungry, I woke up so early so I could like start eating earlier. So but how it led me to have the first binge episode was that I remember like half a year had went by. And one evening I went home like very late after being with my friends. And obviously I hadn't eaten anything past 6 p.m. And I was again like so hungry. I knew I couldn't just fall asleep. And I guess like at first maybe I told myself, okay, like just have an apple or something, like something very quick, like something healthy. But I just like, I wasn't satisfied. So the next thing, like, okay, just have like a meal. Like get over with it, like have a meal. And I remember like I had some noodles or something and I just couldn't stop. And I kept on eating until I was so painfully overfull. I felt so kind of discomfort. I felt like disgusted. I was just like so overfull. And obviously, this was the first binge episode I ever had. I never had experienced anything like this before. And and of course, after that, I had so much guilt, so much kind of shame about what I had done. And I promised myself to be back on the intermittent fasting from tomorrow. Everything will be normal, But from then point on, like I think like what happened was that like I'm so grateful for my body. Because like my body stepped in and my body just like stopped this craziness, or at least like it tried to do it. Because like I feel like at that point the starvation response like kicked in, and the increased hunger and everything, and I just couldn't go back to the fasting, at least for the that length of time. And I just couldn't continue with this. And of course I gained all the weight back, even some more, because of the rebound weight gain. But the thing is that I never stopped fully dieting. Like this is when I freaked out and I started to start to restrict my food, exercise more, like manage my eating, obsess about my eating and everything further. So this is where like the eating issues just started, like start of my disordered eating that later led to the full-blown like bulimia and orthorexia. But the fasting, intermittent fasting, I did it like, of course, more than just this one time. But doing it half a year was never possible for me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can really relate to a lot of what you said, especially about that first binge and how you just had never experienced anything like that before. I remember feeling the same way. And then, instead of realizing, wow, well, maybe I should give up this diet, the reaction, at least mine, and you're saying yours was too, was to diet more and try to control yourself more. And it's just can lead to this really damaging cycle that I'm sure a lot of the listeners can relate to as well. Something you mentioned about, that your body was healthy at the time you started this first diet, you were able to lose weight this first time. And that happened to me too. Like the first time I tried, like my restriction was more of like low calorie, low fat. And I did lose weight the first time. But then I never could go back to it. And it's interesting because I hear this story a lot. People say, well, it worked. Then I just need to do it. I need to make myself do it. Can you kind of talk about why people sort of attach to this first diet and think it's the answer for them? And like why eventually it just stops working, just like fasting did for you?
Yeah, I think the thing is that, when we, as you said, that the first time we lose the weight, like our body is not damaged with the dieting. Mm-hmm. And also the starvation response hasn't like fully kicked in yet. So and also the diet was never actually working, but the starvation response just, takes it time to kick in because your body really it doesn't believe someone will willingly restrict. So this is the first thing that, you can lose a lot of weight quickly when your body is still healthy. But when it's you're maybe 10 times doing a diet or, in my case, half a year, continuing with this intermittent fasting, the more you are actually like teaching your body to, like lower the metabolism, increase the hunger and everything. So your body's starvation response absolutely starts to like kick in and protect you from starving, because like many people don't consider dieting as starvation, but I totally think like how can our body know the difference from dieting or starvation? And our body is not designed to be on diets. Our body is actually designed to fight against with the dieting or the starvation. But many people don't know it. Like I didn't know it. Like many people don't explain it to you like that. And people who diet, they like all the time they blame themselves. And they think like, oh, like I just wasn't as good as the last time, and I just have to use more willpower, or maybe there is some trick or something, or like maybe I'm an emotional eater, or like there's something wrong with me. So, and also we have this like fairy tale, right? Like the first time it did work. So almost like it's so luring because we have the evidence that it has worked. So it has to work this time as well. But they don't realize that the context has changed so much from your first diet versus like maybe like half a year later, or even like a few months later. Like the backlash can be just in like a few weeks dieting even. So let alone like many years. So the context is so different. And yeah, like your body like don't respond to dieting with just like sustained weight loss and just suppressing your, like just having a decreased hunger. No, actually your body wants to gain weight when there is a scarcity of food. Your body wants to increase your hunger. Your body is literally like makes you obsessed with foods. Like your brain neurology changes when people are on diets. Like they become more focused on foods. And also as you diet, restrict foods, and even like force yourself to eat healthy and everything, then actually you don't start to crave the healthy foods or the low calorie foods. You will start to crave the high calorie foods, the processed foods, the junk food and everything. So yeah, like it becomes like so hard to go back there because your body uses like all those different mechanisms and processes to fight against the dieting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that the message sort of for anyone listening is that, don't think of that first diet as this magical experience where you lost weight. I mean, like you said, the context is very different now, and it's not something wrong with you. It's something wrong with dieting. So even if you say, oh, this first diet made me feel good, I lost weight, like it's not going to have that same effect. It's just going to continue harming you. And I think that's a big reason that a lot of people don't want to let dieting go, because they think they can make it work again. And it's just not going to happen. It's just going to keep sending your body into that starvation mode. I mean, I remember I was kind of like you in that I dieted my first time for almost a year, and then it just switched, and I couldn't even maintain like a low calorie diet for a day. After that, it was just like my body fought back, and it was a good thing. I mean, the binging wasn't a good thing, but my body trying to save me, that's a healthy response. So it's not you, it's the diet. I kind of want to get back to talking about specifically fasting. And why do you think fasting in particular, I mean, all dieting causes problems, but why is fasting particularly harmful for people with tendencies toward disordered eating?
I actually think, based on my own experience, is that like no matter how you call it, like do you call it fasting or intermittent fasting or like once a week fasting or whatever other diet, then it's still a restriction, and restriction has the same effects to your body as dieting, like what we talked about, the starvation backlash and everything. And also thinking about that, like food is our body's primary need, right? Like one of our body's primary needs, the same way as our body needs like water, enough oxygen or air, or like having enough sleep and everything. And when we are like constantly overriding that body's primary need, and we are not responding to our body's like hunger cues and everything, and we are applying rules, and we are sticking to some, external, like when we can eat, and some, guidelines that other people have created, and we are not listening to our body, but we are listening to some external rules. And yeah, you're about to create like big problems for your body, because like food is our body's primary need, and you can't just decide like how you want to eat, when you want to eat, how much you want to eat. Like body has some needs and you have to meet those needs. So it's like and if you don't, it's just like creates all those problems. And also like just thinking about the stress your body putting your body through, right? Like overriding those hunger signals. As with me, like constantly going to bed, like hungry, thinking about food and everything. So it was like a huge stress to my body that eventually led me to have like a full-blown binge episode. So just I can't even imagine like how much my body was stressed out at that point already. And also that I suppressed my body weight. I lost weight. So even that is a huge stress for the body, because the body doesn't willingly choose to lose weight and like without any consequences. But it's it's a stress for the body. So like it doesn't matter how you call it, fasting or dieting. I think it has like a very similar or even like the same side effects.
Yeah, I think even people who don't have that tendency toward maybe an eating disorder, it still can have risk. I think it's such a popular trend right now, and there's so much information saying that it has health benefits, and it's, people say it's not even a diet, it's a lifestyle. But I think you have to look at yourself and your reaction. And like, I think it can increase stress, like you were saying, and it raises cortisol levels. It messes up your sleep. I'm sure you weren't sleeping great when you were thinking about food all the time. And, even people who don't binge can experience like episodes of overeating and, that rebound overeating, muscle loss. Like just, it's not, I guess, the holy grail of dieting that it's sort of made out to be today. And I just think it's something that, anyone, considering it, or especially people with disordered eating, like it's just something that's better avoided. And, something I want to talk about is, what would you basically say to people who want to do it for health reasons? I know a lot of people who do want to try fasting or really any sort of diet, they say, well, I'm still going to eat enough food. It's for my health. I need to do it in order to, like some people with insulin resistance or things like that. What would you say to people who say they're trying it for their health?
Mm-hmm. I would say, like, firstly, if you are listening to this particular, podcast or watching the video, then obviously, like, it's very likely you already have problems with your eating. Maybe you have bulimia or problems with binge eating or overeating or any symptoms of, I don't know, like food addiction or emotional eating or whatever. Then any type of restriction, dieting, fasting is just going to make your symptoms worse. And actually getting rid of all restriction is the number one step towards full recovery, because a person can't be fully recovered when they still have an eating disorder. And also talking about the health, right? Because like if you are fasting for some supposed health benefits, but you continue to have an eating disorder on the background, then are you actually healthy? Like, no, you're not. And also, like, even asking, like, what is health anyway? Because is health really like some, specific ways we are eating, or at what times we are eating, or whatever, or is our health actually more holistic, and it's composed with various different ingredients and everything? Because I think like our health is more holistic. And as I said, that you can continue fasting for maybe some few health benefits, but if on the background you are obsessed with foods, you have a binge eating problem, like any type of disordered eating disorder problem, then the fasting is not going to make you healthy. It's just like increasing your stress, preoccupation with food. And as we all know, like the eating disorders has like so many, physical and mental health negative like consequences by itself. And also very often, when we are listening only to the scientific studies and everything, but when you apply it to the human being, as I did this experiment on myself, the fasting and everything. So where were my health benefits? I didn't get those health benefits. Maybe at first, like, I had more energy. Like I lost weight. I don't know, like maybe I decreased, some late night, eating ice cream or like whatever, like, because I don't think like those things are bad for you or anything, but it's just like all the negative consequences were like far, far, far worse than the supposed health benefits. So, but the sad thing is that many people have to have their own experience in order to believe something, because like very often it doesn't even matter like what I say or what Catherine says or what some scientific study or whatever says, but you have to apply it in your own life and see if it works or not. And also, thinking about that, like if it's truly not a diet but a lifestyle, then can you really do it for the rest of your life without any negative physical, mental health consequences, without adding more stress to your life? Because if it's not a diet, you should be able to do it for the rest of your life and feeling like the benefits and no ill effects and anything. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. Otherwise, it is just as another diet, and it wasn't the lifestyle at all. Because I really go by the rule that like what I'm doing today, whether eating wise, whether exercise wise, whatever, life behaviors, like, is it adding more stress to my life long term, or is it actually decreasing stress? And what is happening like long term? Because I don't care about like short term, because like we can all fast, we can all put ourselves through this, like forced starvation, semi-starvation, everything short term. But what happens long term? Like what you're doing today, can you keep on doing it for the rest of your life? So that is the kind of the thing to think about.
Yeah. It's like you don't just consider today, you consider like down the road, and also your mental health and your emotional health. And like, even though let's say you were losing weight when you were fasting, you were obsessed with food. You were thinking about it all the time. And that's just not healthy. And anytime we're sort of imposing rules on ourselves based on outside sources and not listening to our own body, it just causes problems. So I think that was really helpful. I'm not an expert at fasting or nutrition, and I would recommend that you seek, doctor or nutritionist advice for matters relating to your health. That's just my normal disclaimer. But my opinion is that even if you can technically eat enough, like during the time that you're, quote, allowed to eat on your fasting and your intermittent fasting, it's still like it's imposing stressful rules on yourself. And whether or not you call it a diet, like it's still a restrictive way of eating. And I think that to recover, like you said, people listening to this interview right now are wanting to recover and to let go of these harmful behaviors. It is so helpful and so necessary to let go of restriction. So even if you're technically eating enough food, it's still a rule. It's still a rigid and possibly obsessive mindset. So, I know you teach people to let go of all that and learn to follow your intuition. So can you maybe talk about like how you help people learn to do that? How do you help people let go of these rules and just learn to listen to their body in an intuitive way?
I think the first thing is really to educate yourself and to know like why the restriction and dieting doesn't work in the first place. Because this is why I kept on going back to it, for so many years, because I thought that it works, and I just blame myself for why it doesn't work. But it was never supposed to work, because dieting is not natural. And as I said, like our body is not designed to be on diets. Our body is actually designed to fight against dieting. And also I remember like this quote I read somewhere, I think it's very true, that the weight loss industry is the only industry that has a product that fails like 99% of the time, but people don't blame the product, but they blame themselves. Like the only industry on the planet who gets away with a failed product. So firstly, really to understand like why diets don't work, and also understand like why they make your health and your weight actually worse. So this is really what I would start with, because like diets have like 99% failure rate. If you think about the long-term results, of course, like some, sites say that 95.7 or like whatever, but I think like this doesn't even matter, because for example, like would you go to a brain surgery with a failure rate of like 99%. Like nobody would go. Everybody would think like it's just crazy. But somehow, like even those studies, everything is there, the proof is there. There are like so many studies done on that and how it doesn't work. And there is like no diet specific diet on the planet that has sustained the weight loss results, like long-term, or the health benefits. Mm-hmm. So like first understanding like why diets don't work and why they make your health and weight actually worse. And if I can, like I can also talk about my book, mm-hmm. if it's okay. Yeah. Because I wrote this book essentially to help myself. It's called The Brainwashed. Obviously the ED is for eating disorders, and specifically about diet-induced eating disorders, because this is what was like part of my story. Like it all started with diets, and I think many people are not aware of the diet-induced eating disorders and how diets can lead to disordered eating, but also eating disorders, as it did for me. So and I wrote this book like helping myself to fully understand like why it doesn't work, what effects restriction and diets has on my body, on my physical health, on my mental health, and everything. So and I wrote this book and kind of like the step-by-step how I figured everything out and everything that helped me, and how I am now like fully recovered from bulimia and orthorexia, and have been for the past past 5 years now actually. Mm-hmm. So but other than that, also I share videos on my YouTube channel. I have one video specifically about like why diets don't work and why they make your health and weight worse. So like I try to share my knowledge in this way, because otherwise like it's just like a huge subject to like dive into right now. But understanding why it doesn't actually work. Because for me, like my recovery, like full recovery, really started when I became like so painfully aware that anytime I am dieting, restricting, fasting, over-exercising, purging, whatever, like I am making my symptoms worse. I am making my eating worse. I am making my health worse. Actually, I'm making my the weight worse. And it's almost like if you want to have problems with binge eating, mm-hmm. if you want to have continuous food obsession, problems with feeling like a food addict or emotional eater, then go on diets, because mm-hmm. this is exactly the results you will get. So when I became painfully aware that diets actually is causing everything I am trying to avoid, then this was the path for me, like fully letting go of restriction and the path of starting my journey to full recovery.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that, when people hear us talk about giving up dieting, like not doing fasting, they think that we're saying, well, you're just saying that we can't try to be healthy, because it is a cultural message that gets sent that dieting equals healthy. But it's just not the case. I mean, it plays out in the research, it's the failure rate. And so we're not saying you can't be healthy. We just think health is a different path. It's like you talked about earlier, a more holistic path, thinking about your mental health, your emotional health, listening to your body. That's the path, I think, to health, not following someone else's rules that are promoted as healthy when they really create the opposite effect in your body. Everything you've shared has been very helpful. Are there any final thoughts about fasting or your own experience or your experience helping others that you'd like to share before we wrap up? And then also, I'd like you to tell everyone how they can learn more about you.
Yes, I think really that you don't have to go through the same experience that I did. So this is why I'm here sharing my story and my experience with fasting and how it actually didn't work. And it was a starting path to my disordered eating and then eating disorders. And obviously, like all throughout the years, I continued to, do fasting. I did like water fasting, juice fasting as well. So I would say the moral of the story is that fasting is still a restriction, no matter like how you call it. It's just maybe another name to it, maybe some now popular name to it, like intermittent fasting. But basically anything that is, it comes from external rules, you have to listen to only like what other people say or recommend. You are not listening to your body, your hunger cues, how much you should be eating by your body cues, when you should be eating by your body cues. the moral is to stop restriction. And I hope like my story inspired you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And again, your website is followtheintuition.com.
Yes, you can definitely go to my website where I have a blog, where I write articles, also share the videos, but just like written form as well. And also on my website, I have my book. And if you want to know more about recovery, how to recover, also about intuitive eating, then you can go to my YouTube channel, Follow the Intuition. Or if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram. And Instagram is as well, Follow the Intuition.
Okay. And I'll put those links in the show description as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. It was super helpful. And I hope that you'll come back to the show again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
That's all for the interview with Elisa. Before I close the show, I just want to let you know that if you're new to the Brain Over Binge approach, you can get my free 30-page PDF ebook called The Brain Over Binge Basics by signing up for my newsletter and updates. This free ebook gives you all of the fundamentals of the Brain Over Binge approach that I talk about in this podcast and in my books. You can sign up to get that ebook in the show notes or on brainoverbinge.com. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you'll be here again next time. I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.